Hello, everyone, and welcome along to the Blood Red podcast, courtesy of the Liverpool Echo. I'm your host, Patrick Smith, for the second time, and hopefully not the last. Let's see how many accidental partridges I do in half an hour. We've got plenty to discuss in this busy festive period, and joining me for this Christmas episode with the perfect blend of youth and experience. Well, at first, we have Chief LSC writer for the Liverpool Echo, Ian Doyle. Hello, Doyle.
Hello there. Am I the youth bit? Yeah, thanks.
I'll let you be the judge of that. As Pep Blinders said in his press conference, age is just a number. Certainly not a quote you want out of context, anyway. Well, we've got our fellow Liverpool Echo child prodigy as well. And remember the name, Keifer MacDonald. Keifer, welcome along.
Good afternoon. Yeah, to be fair, it's better than my last appearance. My hairline was compared to Wayne Rooney's. So to be honest, I don't know if I am the youth or the experience, but I'll take either. To be fair, at this rate.
Well, this is a hairline-free safety zone, Keith, whatever you want it to be. Let's get stuck right into the football. There are plenty to look back on after last night's Carabao Cup exit at the Etihad following the conclusion of the World Cup break. Doyle, let's start with you. You were there at the Etihad last night. Have you had any further thoughts today on your verdict of last night's result?
Well, we got given a Christmas dinner, which was a great bonus before the game, to be fair. So we were quite happy with that. In terms of the game itself, when you consider that both teams hadn't played properly for about 6 weeks and they were playing not quite full strength teams, I'd argue that City's was a bit more full strength than Liverpool. It was a good game, wasn't it? Good game. I mean, I know that some people will say, "Oh, look, Liverpool, they won 2 trophies last year and they've already now got knocked out of one of them, or they can't defend it, I should say, and they'll use that as a stick to beat them with after what happened in the first part of the season." But I disagree with that. I thought while there were some obvious issues that need to be, addressed, certainly defensively. But just overall, I thought Liverpool played reasonably well. The City away is the hardest game you can have probably in football at the moment. And Liverpool got it first game out after 6 weeks. As I said, after 6 weeks off. I mean, City also had their time off. But it was quite interesting. I thought, City had gone 5 games without a win against Liverpool going into this game. And you could tell that there's no way that Guardiola wanted to make it 6. And I think it was quite telling that the winner was scored by Nathan Ake, who was obviously playing for Holland in the quarterfinals of the World Cup alongside Virgil van Dijk. And where was Virgil van Dijk? He was sat at home watching it on telly because he was given an extended rest. And I do think if Van Dijk had been playing, I do wonder whether Haaland scores that goal, whether it's the first goal where the City have got that many players free at the far post to score the eventual winner. But that's all ifs and buts and whatever have you. But I think overall, Jurgen Klopp didn't seem too, while he was obviously disappointed they lost, I don't think he was too despondent. And I think there was enough there for Liverpool to be going along with. And it was it is the lesser of the 4 trophies or the competitions that Liverpool are in. Personally, I really like the League Cup, so I was a bit upset that they got knocked out. But if you're going to lose at Manchester City going down fighting. So, that's a proper way to go out.
I mean, that's the thing as well. Obviously, it wasn't exactly a strong Liverpool lineup, whereas for City, it was relatively first choice aside from 3 or 4 players. I mean, Keifer, that's going to dominate the talk. Should we be concerned about the depth of quality within the Liverpool team? Because, for example, if City wanted to change, they had a plethora of options on the bench available. Could Liverpool now start being concerned with the depth of quality within the team? Perhaps, City have quality options to choose from, whereas Liverpool are sort of forced into making changes sometimes, aren't they?
Yeah, I can see both sides to it. I mean, I think everyone knows that Jurgen Klopp's never really been a big fan of having a massive squad. He's always kind of kept it down to, a happy medium. And I think obviously over the last 7 years, he's struck that pretty well. You look at obviously the trophies they've won and the point side they've achieved. Who are we to argue and say, the number of elite world class players that he is managing, he's doing them wrong or whatever. So I think obviously it's just obviously being the centre back crisis the other year. Obviously that was kind of it was a bit of a freak time really. Obviously the amount of games that were played and obviously the injuries in such positions, and then obviously when they did strengthen in that January window, obviously Ben Davies obviously didn't kick a ball for the rest of that season, and obviously Kabak had the injury midway through, so then they were left without midfielders again. Obviously Henderson did a stint at the back, so did Fabinho, and then to be fair, like even more recently now with the injuries to Diogo Jota and Luis Diaz, you can argue that they're pretty freak really. Obviously Jota came back, obviously has a couple of good games, plays really well in that 1-0 victory over City, and then it's the 95th, 96th minute he picks up that kind of, again, a bit of a freak injury. And then obviously Diaz, he gets the injury at Arsenal, and obviously his rehabilitation's going well, and everyone thinks that he's in line for a return after the World Cup. obviously goes out to Dubai, and then, you know, as Klopp kind of says, they did took a look at it, and obviously worse than obviously first feared, and obviously now he's going to be set for a spell on the sidelines. But it just, I don't think that's something you could necessarily plan for. I mean, if you look at when everyone is fit, obviously they brought Nunez in. I think initially as well, I think everyone's kind of talking about the forward department now. Obviously, you know, you're going to be playing one of probably Oxlade-Chamberlain or Carvalho on the left, and obviously move Nunez out into the middle. Obviously play Salah on the right. But I think, you know, like I said, they brought Nunez in the summer for a big fee. And if you're kind of looking at all your options, and obviously with Firmino on the last year of his contract, obviously more of a more reduced role, you know, they've got 4 or 5, you know, decent options there across, you know, the front 4 or 5 positions. You know, Jota can play off the right, off the left, down the middle. Obviously Diaz can play on the left. You know, even Nunez can play on the left, play down the middle. So I think they have got enough. And obviously you throw Carvalho into that, and even if you were desperate, you could probably throw Elliott in as a right-sided cover. But I do think, obviously, that there was kind of the freak injuries in recent weeks maybe have turned that. And obviously Klopp said today that, you know, that they will kind of look if as he kind of always says, doesn't he, in January, if the right thing's there and available, you know, they'll explore it in the mid-season transfer window. And obviously that's kind of what they did with Diaz last year. But I think obviously everyone knows that the January transfer window is not a great window for buying clubs. Obviously, you know, put a World Cup tax on that as well, which obviously you wouldn't normally get. It does make it difficult. It does make it difficult for buying clubs, and obviously gives selling clubs, you know, a huge amount of power. And obviously, you know, I know it's business as normal is the kind of message that's coming out of Liverpool at the moment in terms of, you know, everything that's going on with the ownership. It's not really going to affect transfers, but, you know, considering what you think maybe might happen in the summer in terms of, you know, certain players, you know, maybe joining midfielders for big fees, you know, would Liverpool now go out in the January transfer window and spend, you know, an extra 30 million on top of a player who would have been available in the summer for, you know, 25, 30 million. So obviously there's all those kind of conversations and discussion to have. But, you know, as Doyle says, I don't think, obviously they weren't disgraced last night at all. You know, if Liverpool get through, I mean, they could easily on another night take that to penalties. And then, you know, you'd fancy yourselves on penalties with Kelleher in goal. And all of a sudden, if they're in the 5th round and they've knocked City out, obviously Chelsea have gone out as well, you're probably looking at United as obviously the last big team left. And all of a sudden, you know, no one's really complaining again, are they? So I just think it's such, you know, fine margins and obviously a flip of a coin, really. But, you know, I would maybe like to see one addition in January, but you've got to think what that looks like with, you know, in terms of their plans for Firmino. And, you know, because obviously he's got what he's entered in the last 7 months of his contract now. Obviously, they're probably going to have already had discussions about that. They'll probably have an idea of what they want to do. So, you know, when everyone's fit, if he's kind of like the 5th choice or the 6th choice, whatever it will be, that might make more sense than going out and spending 40, 50 million on someone who's going to be at the bottom of the pile kind of thing.
I mean, it's a good point you made there, Keifer, about, you know, you get inflated prices in January anyway, but let alone this World Cup tax that's going to be on top of that. I mean, it could be the most expensive January window we've ever seen. I mean, Doyle, there's plenty of speculation surrounding transfers. It's sort of increased following the press conferences from Pep Lijnders referring to Enzo Fernandez by his first name, and particularly Jurgen Klopp today. I mean, he was relatively open about the fact that he would be interested in making some transfers, as, you know, as plainly as he could possibly say in a press conference. Do you think it's much more likely now, following this past week, that Liverpool will make some business in January and, you know, will go in for, let's say, Enzo Fernandez or Jude Bellingham?
No. Before we go any further, we'll come back to transfers in a minute. Can we talk about the light show at the game last night? Before the game, I mean, I'm not sure what you saw on television. I know Keifer was in the away end. I'm not sure what you saw on television, but it started with like smoke going off in the corners of the stadium. We were all like sat there going, "What's going on here?" You know, there's quite a lot of people not particularly well with, you know, respiratory problems and stuff. It's like, oh, just all this, what's all this smoke happening? And we thought maybe the crowd were going to magically appear from behind it because there wasn't that many people in at that point. They did all turn up eventually, by the way. But then that light show, it was like, I mean, it was like you were like at Creamfields or something. It was like, then it ends with them going on about disco and it's stuff like, hang on, it's the Carabao Cup. I know they've not been there for 6 weeks, but come on, you know what I mean? In the last game, they got beat by Brentford, didn't they? So maybe they just thought everybody needed cheering up. But
I was expecting Pep Guardiola to come in like Apollo Creed and Rocky IV. I think
that's it. Yeah, exactly. It was just, it was just stupid. It's like, can you imagine that happening at Anfield? Honestly, they literally just everyone just turn around and walk out. It just, I mean, let's be honest. I'm all for innovation, certainly around games. Fans pay an awful lot of money to go to games, and it's not just about actually watching the match itself, but some things are just, come on, pack it in, stop that. Anyway, transfers, yeah. No, they're not going to sign Fernandes, no chance. They're not going to spend 100 million euros on a player they could have got for less than half that about 6 months ago. That would be stupid. So you can forget that one. Bellingham, he's not going to join in January, is he? If they're going to sign him, it'll be in the summer unless something remarkable happens. So, in terms of Liverpool signing players, if they do sign somebody, which they've said they're always looking, and they always do look. So there's nothing new in what's been said there. It's interesting. Klopp said today, he kind of hinted at, if you look at our situation, we are going to be looking. Well, the situation is they've got two left wingers who are out injured until February and March at the very least. So if they are bringing somebody in, it'll probably be somebody to help out up front, I'd have thought. So from that point of view, they will be looking. But again, they haven't got. It's not like City and United. After Jamie Carragher said they need £250 million investment in the squad to get near to the top. I'm not sure whether that's quite true, but we did point out that Chelsea and United spent an awful lot of money in the last couple of windows, and that is true. And City will always be able to splash the cash. And then you've got Newcastle. They'll be spending money, and they'll have a little bit of a premium on top of that because nobody wants to really move to Newcastle. It's the old when Middlesbrough had the money, they'd show them around Yarm and say, "Oh, it looks really nice there," and then they go to the Riverside, and they did say that's all right at the end. Actually, that's all for Newcastle, nice city, but. Yeah, in terms of the World Cup, never buy a player on the back of a World Cup. Never, ever do it. World Cup premium. The World Cup premium is as much in the cost, but it's like, let's say that the Moroccan guy's name I've forgotten already. Amrabat, is it? Yeah,
that's Amrabat. Yeah.
Do not sign him now. He's going to be absolutely shattered. He will be. He'll be absolutely. You're not going to get much out of him probably the next couple of months. And that's the exact time is now when Liverpool do need someone to come in and make an instant impact. They don't want to. What happened with Diaz last year? As Keifer said, that's unusual. Doesn't normally happen. They obviously signed Diaz 6 months early because they were going to sign him in the summer. And they saw there was an opportunity. Well, Tottenham came in for him, didn't they? So they wanted to make sure he didn't go there, and it worked out for them. They tried it with Carvalho as well, and I thought he did okay. Well, he did okay to a point on Thursday. It was interesting, really, because he kind of, when he gets into the final third, he looks like he can do something. But he obviously scored the goal very well. It took it very well, but he gets knocked off the ball very easily because you forget that he's 20 and he's not quite physically there. He's not used to the Premier League, so you can't really be putting too much on him playing on the left wing. Ox came on and did well, I thought, but again, he's hardly played all season. So you've got these two players who are competing for that left wing role because Nunez, who was there, has to play up front because Firmino's injured. So this is the thing. If Liverpool are going to sign somebody for an immediate impact, it's not going to be midfield. It's going to be somebody up front. And then you're thinking, well, as Keifer said, are they going to give Firmino a new contract? I don't know. They've had talks. It's all about long-term planning. So while Liverpool, you asked me the question, will they sign somebody in January? Fernandes, no. Bellingham would be amazed if they did. Doesn't mean they're not going to sign Bellingham in the future. But if they are going to sign somebody, I would not be surprised if it was somebody to help out that forward line. And there will be players available, not necessarily ones who played at the World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on Nunez and Firmino there. We'll come back to them, but I'm going to stay with this attackers situation in February, Keifer. I mean, obviously, we've got two of the best attackers in the league, if not Europe, returning in February or March. If Liverpool were to move in for an attacker, do you think they'd maybe struggle to convince them on that basis? Because either you'd sign someone who would be a starter anyway, which would cost a lot of money, or maybe someone at the level of an Origi or a Minamino. I think that's maybe an option we've missed this season because last year we could use them as a sort of last roll of the dice, or we'd use them in a game like last night, for example. Do you think that's the sort of player they'll move in for in January?
Yeah, potentially that's probably the profile, isn't it? But like you say, it's a bit of a catch-22 because if you kind of go down the route of future proofing and you sign someone, just say Carvalho didn't play for Liverpool and he was the kind of a mold of a player you're looking at. He's not going to be someone who'd come in and kind of make an immediate impact. And then obviously the other end of the other side of that is someone who's in their prime and had a really good World Cup, and you can say come to Liverpool kind of thing. We've not got these players till March or February time, whatever. But what happens then when they both return? And I mean, if obviously I know Jota's had a few injuries since he's been here, but Diaz has obviously played a lot of football and he doesn't tend to pick up too many from kind of what we've seen over the last year. So it's like, do you sign someone and then say, oh, by the way, when they're both back, you're going to be 5th or 6th choice? And then obviously to compensate that, you might have to give higher wages and all that kind of thing. So it does get a bit messy and a bit difficult. So obviously it's kind of easy to see why Klopp's kind of said, we'll be looking, as Doyle says, they always kind of say that they're always kind of aware and open. But I just think it could be quite difficult just because the quality of the forward line when everyone is fit and firing is really strong. Obviously Firmino's going to be out for a couple of games, so you'd imagine maybe back for Brentford. And then obviously that you can have Nunez and then Carvalho and then Chamberlain as your left-sided options. And then obviously Nunez can maybe compensate down the middle as well if you want to rotate with Firmino. So it might just be a case of, they just look at that and think, we can get by. I think there's 7 games until the start of February. I mean, you think even in that time, if Jota's back, you wouldn't imagine he'd be thrown straight into it given kind of the nature of the injury. So, then you're probably looking at a couple of games to build up fitness and all that kind of routine and whatever. So, you're probably looking at mid-February, the kind of Real Madrid game, aren't you? The home leg is potentially around about the time they could come back. So all of a sudden you're in the business end of the season, the home stretch. So it is a really difficult one. And obviously kind of all the points that we've just said about World Cups and premiums and all that and squad statuses. I just think it will be quite difficult to kind of sanction a deal and maybe find that right profile. And, Liverpool have been so good at finding that right profile and right balance of people and players. So I don't think it's something they would, want to jeopardise, for such a short period, giving it probably 6 weeks at the most until they have at least one of, Diaz or Jota back.
Yeah, I think the profile that I and most Liverpool fans would like to see is a bit of pace, some natural width, someone who could perhaps play on both wings to provide more cover because, let's say, God forbid, Salah gets injured. We don't really have anyone who's naturally a right-sided winger. Anyway, let's move on, though, to Darwin Nunez, Doyle. I mean, not the best of nights for him last night. Nice assist from Salah, of course. He missed quite a few chances. I'd not be too harsh and criticise him because, that's exactly what I have just done. But to nick a stat from our own Josh Williams from Analysing Anfield, Nunez posted the highest conversion rate of any player with 55 plus non-penalty shots in Europe's top 6 leagues last season. So he's clearly got the finishing within him. Should we be expecting more from
him? Well, eventually, yeah. I mean, don't forget that when they split up, sounds like they had the summer holidays, didn't it? When they split up for the World Cup, he'd scored quite a few goals in the last couple of games, hadn't he? Scored twice against Southampton, had a decent game against Tottenham. Scored some other goals, I can't remember. But he's obviously got up to 9 after his false start, shall we say, after his troubling first couple of weeks, which was inevitable in a way, really. But I'd be more worried if he wasn't getting into those positions. I mean, he played City and he got it 3 times. The only worry is that he kept on doing the same shot and getting it wrong. So you'd have thought after the second one, come on, you know what you're doing here. But he is left-footed. He dragged it wide with his right foot. I suppose he could have gone with the other one, but I as I said before, I'd be more concerned if he wasn't getting. I thought he had a decent game, to be honest. Just all round, he as you mentioned, he ran away from. To be honest, I thought it was Rodri at first, but it was Laporte. Although I think everybody wants to run away from Rodri, given the way he goes around knocking people over. He's massive. So yeah, it's just one of those. It's what happens with a striker, though. Just what happens with a striker. I'm pretty sure if it had been any other player, they wouldn't have made a massive deal of it. But because it's Nunez and, he's still coming to terms with playing in England to a degree. Because I think we saw, as I said, with his overall performance, he's linking well with his teammates. They seem to be getting more out of it. The fact that he was released 3 times by his teammates just suggests that they know how to get the best out of him now. They know what kind of balls that he likes. And it's up to him to start putting them away. And, and as you mentioned with that statistic, which I kind of didn't quite understand fully. It's just
he's basically got the best goal. He scores the most shot. No, he's got the best.
You see what I mean? You don't even know what it is yourself. Yeah, the pressure's on here. The pressure's on.
This isn't of any player in Europe with over 55 shots. So there we go.
This isn't analysing Anfield. Come on. This is far more. This is more basic. This is not for the people who know what they're talking about. This is for us. But yeah. I'm not worried about him at all, and he wouldn't be surprised if he gets a goal at Aston Villa on Monday, because that's just the kind of player he is. And as we mentioned before, with the injuries happening now, it just seemed a bit odd that he was only like, it doesn't seem that long ago. People were wondering, how's he going to get into the team? And now it's like, we're building the entire team around him. So that's what happens. That's what happens with football. Things change very, very quickly, and you need all the players, and Liverpool are going to need him to start scoring, and I'm pretty sure that he will.
I mean, talking of strikers then, Keifer, the other striker on the side is Roberto Firmino, contract expiring in 6 months. I mean, we've spoken about this many times on many different podcasts. What should Liverpool do? Would you be looking to, ease him out of his contract and bring a new striker in January to sort of bed them in? Or is that something you wait for at the end of the season? I mean, I don't think anyone knows. I don't know if Jurgen Klopp may even know what he's going to do in that situation.
It's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, I think everyone kind of said it when, obviously the Salah contract over the past, 18 months really has obviously dominated. And obviously before he kind of knew it, obviously Mane's and Firmino's contracts felt like they really did kind of creep up on the end. It's only in 2 weeks or 10 days, whenever it is, that he'll be able to negotiate with overseas sides. So that's always a worry, that kind of 1st of January date. I think, once you hit that, as we're going to see with the likes of Naby Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain as well, once you hit that, it does feel like the writing's on the door. But I think maybe with Firmino, it does feel a bit different because obviously, last season, he didn't have the best of seasons. Obviously, he was injured quite a bit, but started this season quite well. And it's quite funny, actually, because he didn't actually play that well in certain games. But, I think the Brighton game, for instance, is 3-3. Don't actually think he played particularly well, but obviously he gets 2 goals that day, I think. And, it's kind of just that he's obviously maybe evolving his game, adapting his game. Obviously, kind of gets into his 30s, and he's not that that pressing centric figure that we once saw and kind of once led the line. And obviously that's signalled by the signing of Nunez and kind of the changing of the guard. But I mean, obviously, it completely depends. I mean, first and foremost, what does he want at this stage of his career? Does he want another challenge? And does he want something like Mane? Does he want his last big, change of experience or
a massive paycheck, maybe?
Yeah, I want to say that in a nice, possible way. But does he want that? Does his family want to relocate? Obviously, he's got kids, hasn't he? So does he want to stay in Liverpool? All these kind of things obviously factor into it kind of more than we know. Obviously, from a Liverpool point of view, I think you could do worse things than give him a 2-year contract. I mean, to be fair, like if it was kind of one of the 3 of them were all out of contract. Obviously, Mane, Salah, and Firmino was 2023. People kind of saying, well, I'd sacrifice Firmino if it means that we can keep those 2, and everyone kind of had their own opinions. And I probably, to be fair, would have sacrificed Firmino if it meant we could have kept Mane. But obviously, the way things have obviously gone since, obviously Firmino and Salah are the 2 still at the club. So I think I would keep him. Obviously, again, depends what wages. Would he take a reduced contract? Kind of similar to kind of what Milner did in the summer. What it sounds like, obviously, to extend by a year. And then even if he does 1 year and then goes when he's 32 or 31, whatever it would be, if he went and then had Liverpool maybe recoup some money for him and he went, I don't know, to Serie A or somewhere like that. But I just think you could do worse things and kind of keep him around, especially with, we've seen Liverpool in the kind of early months of this season. They tried and with a few different formations, and obviously he was kind of key to that in terms of he can play off the striker, can play in a 2, can play on his own, can play in a false 9. Obviously gives you a lot of options, and obviously when you kind of got injuries like this at the minute, that could be key. If you want to put Salah and Nunez as a 2 up front and play Firmino behind, that gives you kind of a way to combat not having the wide players that we'd normally have. So I think just the options he gives you, and obviously the trust that Klopp has in him. I also think obviously the dressing room is a big factor, and whilst he isn't the most vocal player, I just think to have those figures around who have won stuff, and he's not past his sell by date, as I kind of said. He's still scoring goals. He's bagged quite a few this season. Obviously, certainly done better than last year. And like I say, if you can get the right deal for the player and the club, I think it would be a no-brainer, because at the end of the day, he's still only 13. And it's a different age of footballers now. When I was growing up, and I'm sure, it was always when a player hit 30 or even like 29, 30, they were done and they were dusted. And obviously technology's changed, recovery's changed. Footballers look after themselves far better than they did, 15, 20 years ago. So that's all going to have I think psychologically, like I say, when you hit 30, it's right they're done. But Firmino's obviously proven that, and obviously the likes of Salah, the likes of Milner, they're all kind of proved that in recent years. So yeah, I would like to see him stay, but like I say, with the 1st of January approaching, I do think you start to worry a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Cover your ears, Doyle, but I mean, his goal conversion rate this season has been impressive. He's come on, done a job for Liverpool, and he's needed to. And the problem for me is, he's maybe not at the peak of his ability, but I think a replacement that's suitable enough would be very expensive, particularly in January or maybe in the summer. To get someone with that skill set is also very difficult to find. You sort of have to train that player into that role. Doyle, quickly before we move on to Boxing Day, Roberto Firmino, in one word, what would you do?
One word?
Yeah. I'll give you a few more.
Okay. Contract. There you go. That's me one word.
Take from that what you will. Well, then let's move on to Boxing Day. Obviously, stay with you, Doyle. We've got Liverpool travelling to Aston Villa, 5:30 kickoff. I believe you're making the trip to the Midlands, Doyle?
Yes, that's correct.
So,
that's my job.
How important? Of course, how important is this match though for Liverpool's second half of the season? We saw last night that they weren't going through the motions as such. It was more, getting the rustiness of a month-long breakout is going to happen. It was, albeit in very exciting fashion. Are you expecting something a bit different on Monday?
Again, I think for anybody who's watching this on YouTube, I think the question is, which one of us three's got the best beard? I must admit, Pat, I think yours is definitely, you put a bit more effort into that. Although Keifer's trying to distract from his Wayne Rooney hairline.
I'll be honest,
I'm not. What is a hairline? I'm not sure what that is. Anyway, Villa. Villa's always a difficult place for Liverpool to go to. It has been in recent years. I mean, I was there for the 7-2, which was still one of the most hilarious games of football I've ever been to. Just ridiculous. Every time they had a shot, it was like hitting 16 players and going in. Even last season, they went 1-0 down, didn't they, very early on, and Liverpool managed to fight back, get the point. There was obviously get the 3 points. There was obviously the 2-1 game when they won the league in that was kind of not a turning point, but that was a sign that they could do it in was it November 2019? 2019, I think it was. Yeah, but they scored twice very late on. So this kind of fixture has that kind of ability to be quite pivotal and kind of shape the rest of the season for Liverpool. It'll be interesting because obviously Unai Emery's now in charge at Villa, replacing Steven Gerrard, who got sacked. And I know Villarreal got beat by Liverpool in the Champions League semi-final back in April, May. But at half time of the second leg, you were wondering, oh dear, this doesn't look so good for Liverpool. So, and of course, he's got a bit of history with the Europa League final with Sevilla as well. So Emery knows how to set up a team. Klopp's a big fan of his. And it's going to be difficult for Liverpool. But from the same token, Liverpool have had one game now, and Villa didn't have one. So they'll be well up for it. The crowd will be up for it. Boxing Day crowd anyway. Villa Park can be a decent atmosphere when it gets going. Well, I think Liverpool quite enjoy playing there. I think they've historically had quite some quite good results. So it's probably the kind of game that they need, because it's a game that's difficult, but it's winnable. But having said that, is Tottenham the only away game they've won this season in the league? It is, isn't it? It is, isn't it? Yeah. So, well, we talk about that City result there being, they were a bit unlucky, but they lost away again. And I think Liverpool have to start somewhere picking up points on the travels, because if they don't, they're not going to finish in the top four. It's simple as that. So this is, it's not a be-all and end-all game. It's only the 15th game of this Premier League season. But I think for setting up the second part of the season, I think a good result could really, really, really help Liverpool, especially with the other two games they've got coming up over the festive period. Leicester at home, Brentford away. Not going to be easy.
I mean, yeah, as you mentioned there, Dory, there's no further reunions with Mr. Gerrard, unfortunately, for Liverpool fans. Obviously, Villa made the decision pre-World Cup to appoint Unai Emery. Plenty of Unai Emery references from Villarreal to Villa, and hopefully he'll be having a good evening. Painful, I know. But I mean, something that was more painful than that.
I managed to avoid that. Yeah, I was showing him some respect. Come on. What are you playing at?
Something more painful than those little references from me, though, Keifer, is watching Unai Emery's sides play against Liverpool. I mean, we saw it last year with Villarreal in the Champions League, and we've seen it before with Sevilla. Are you expecting a similar test with this Villa side? Do you think they're going to really dig in, as we've seen, and try and grind out for a 0-0 draw ultimately? You're on mute, Keifer.
I'll try again. probably best. I'm not sure, to be honest. It's a difficult one because obviously, typically you get new manager bounce, but it's a bit weird because obviously he had the game against United was his first game, wasn't it? I think just before the World Cup, or one of his first games. Did they draw that? Was it 2-2? Was it? I think at United. But I think they definitely got a point. And then obviously now they went on a kind of a mid-season tour. They played Chelsea, didn't they? And obviously now he's obviously it's an unusual time because obviously he's appointed mid-season, but now he's kind of had a pre-season. So it'd be really interesting to see kind of how he kind of sets up and does he kind of go to the styles that we kind of saw with Seville and obviously Villarreal more recently in the Champions League last year, and kind of how they toppled some big teams, obviously Bayern on the way, Juventus, and obviously gave Liverpool a scare in the second leg. Obviously they're out without Emi Martinez, which is always a good thing, a decent goalkeeper. I think that Robin Olsen, there's talk of him maybe being injured as well or unavailable. So I know they played a behind closed doors game against Everton this week, and there was a young lad who was between the sticks. So things like that could help Liverpool, could help Darwin Nunez. But as Doyle says, it's probably one of them where it's just getting the points on the board rather than the performance. It's something you can maybe think of at a later date when you've kind of got through all these fixtures that they're going to have over the next 3 or 4 weeks, because as Doyle says, the away form hasn't been good enough this season. And if you're going to sacrifice points so easily on the road as Liverpool have done, then you've got no chance. We've got no points. We've also got no chance of qualifying for the top 4, which ultimately could have pretty sizable short-term and long-term effects for Liverpool if they were to miss out, especially with the rise of Newcastle and obviously Tottenham doing quite well. So as I said, it's not a season-defining game, but it's one where now they've had the game against City, which I think was in hindsight, obviously I know they're out of the cup, but I think that game against City was a really good one to kind of just jump into the deep end. If you think who else was in the kind of the 4th round, if they played, I don't know, a Charlton at home or a Blackburn or a Nottingham Forest, you might have had a more passive game. Yes, Liverpool might have been in the next round or whatever, but you might have been dealt a reality check on Boxing Day. But I think Liverpool, as Doyle said earlier, it's the hardest away fixture in the league, and they've done that, and they've been thrown in the deep end. And obviously, there was some negatives within the performance, but I think there was plenty of positives. Fabinho looked better, Chamberlain did well. So I think it's more, as Liverpool, they focus on themselves kind of thing, and obviously don't get too distracted with how Emery could set up. I think they should be okay, and then you just hope that they can take that into the resulting weeks, and Leicester and Brentford, and then obviously the FA Cup break. But it's something certainly for them to build on, and hope they can kind of close that gap between themselves and Tottenham in 4th.
Yeah, definitely. From last night's match against City, I think the positives definitely outweigh the negatives. And while Villa, it's not a crucial game to the season, I think it's so important you get up on the right foot in the league the second half of the season. As Doyle mentioned, Liverpool's away record is so poor. I think you need to start right, start winning away from home and really rack up some points. Otherwise, top 4 is going to, be out of our grasp comes to the spring, which could be a huge problem. Anyway, let's move on to our team selector. I mean, there's naturally going to be plenty of changes from that League Cup tie. Alisson Becker, we presume, will be between the sticks. A bit of a disappointing World Cup quarter-final exit for him. So let's go straight into the back 4 with you, Doyle. Jurgen Klopp giving some team news hints. He's expecting Virgil van Dijk and Trent Alexander-Arnold to be fit. Would you like to kick things off with your back 4, Doyle?
Yeah, Villa beat United 3-1, by the way, and then lost 4-2 against them a few days later in the League Cup. So that was just I thought it was 2-2 as well. What game was that? That was last season, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Where Coutinho scored.
Coutinho, Gerrard one, yeah.
Yeah. Trent, Van Dijk, Matip, and Robertson.
Would you like to elaborate on your choices?
Well, it's because they're the best 4 that are available, judging on the way things have gone lately.
Keifer, are you similarly aligned? And if so, would you like to talk through midfield?
I've gone the same at the back. Gomez obviously didn't cover himself in glory last night, but Matip was decent. Obviously, we saw in the final pre-season, mid-season game against Milan, kind of how he brings the ball out, and he did that again last night for the first goal. And I just think, as I think I said on the pod last week, that it's something that kind of everyone laughs in as a joke about, don't they? Kind of Matip and his kind of marauding runs, but they are so important, as we saw last night. So, for all is well with Van Dijk, and obviously kind of coming back from his extended break, I think came back on Wednesday. They said, didn't he? So that'd be the same back 4 or back 5, even as Doyle. Midfield, I'd go Fabinho. Thought he looked good last night. Looked better. His positioning was better than it has been, since he came back from injury at the Champions League final. And then Hendo on the right, and Thiago on the left. Just think, again, that's our best midfield probably at the minute. Obviously, Elliott's played, I know he's had the break, but obviously played a lot of football. Obviously, Henderson probably maybe riding away from the World Cup did well for England. Felt like maybe a change of scenery did him quite well. Nowhere is he's not as close to the heights that he was in 2019, 2020, but obviously a different stage of his career. And, I just think it'd be good to maybe, like, as Doyle said, Villa Park, can be rocky and it's going to be Boxing Day football. I just think maybe kind of have his kind of leadership in there. And then if you are searching for a goal, maybe you can throw someone like Elliott on with half an hour to go. But I just think settle with your strongest midfield, give it a solid base.
Doyle, how about you for the midfield? What are you going for?
I'm not playing Fabinho. He can be on the bench. I don't think he's ready yet. I don't think he's merited being in the team, to be honest. Henderson with Thiago and Elliott, because I think Elliott hasn't played many games, obviously over the past 6 weeks because he hasn't been playing. And I think Liverpool needs some legs in midfield. And while it wasn't his best game against City, he's still a little bit guilty at times of holding on to the ball for a bit too long. It's almost like he's trying to make his mind up what he wants to do. But when he stops thinking about it and just starts doing it and just running forward, you saw that in the first half in particular, he causes problems. So I think if I'm expecting Villa to just be the kind of way that they're going to be pressing quite a lot. And I think Liverpool needs some legs in midfield, and I think Elliott can bring that.
Yeah, just to touch on last night, I think it was a huge ask for Elliott and Bajcetic in that midfield against Rodri, De Bruyne and Gundogan. I doubt they'll have a tougher test than that in their entire career, potentially. A bit of a harsh one for them. I'll stay with you, though, Doyle, then for your attack. Who are you going for in the front three?
Well, Ben Doak, he's not playing. It's a shame, really, because I would have quite enjoyed seeing him last night, but he's only 17, so there's plenty of time to see him playing for Liverpool again. Probably play against Wolves, to be honest, in the FA Cup. The only real choice is on the left wing, because Nunez will be up front and Salah on the right. I think Oxlade-Chamberlain has got ahead of Carvalho on the strength of his performance in the second half. Although, as we said earlier, that Carvalho scored the goal, did well. So what that will mean then, of course, is Liverpool will have some options on the bench, to be honest. They will have some options, just not many massively attacking ones. You could have Carvalho's one, and who's after that? Actually, is there anyone after that?
No, probably.
So there you go. See, that's the whole point. That goes back to what we were saying before about the transfers. If Liverpool are going to sign somebody, it's probably going to be someone attacking.
Yeah, definitely a replacement attack. Keifer, Oxlade-Chamberlain has been pretty impressive in his past couple of games. He's slowly getting some form. That means he's almost definitely going to get another 8-month injury, probably in his next couple of games, unfortunately for him. Are you going for a similar front three as Doyle, though?
Yeah, Oxlade on the right, Nunez and Salah. I think that obviously Salah and Nunez, despite his misses last night, I think obviously picked themselves. I think obviously, as Doyle says, Oxlade-Chamberlain probably just nipped ahead of Carvalho in the pecking order. Obviously, Carvalho started the first friendly, didn't he, against Lyon and scored. But Oxlade-Chamberlain, I thought he was good against Milan. Was good coming in field, and then obviously last night gets a pre-assist, if you want to call it that, with a brilliant ball to Nunez, who then obviously tees up Salah. I would go for Ox. And obviously he had kind of a frustrating first half to the season. So obviously it's very unlikely that he's going to sign a new contract. We just hope that he can get a few games under his belt between now and the end of the season. Just to kind of show what he can do to potential suitors, but also I think he deserves that in his Liverpool career. I think too many times he's missed out on big moments, so it would be nice for him to kind of, I think, obviously not going to be first choice when Diaz and Jota are back, but between now and then, if he can kind of contribute something in his final season, I think that would be a nice way and a fitting way kind of for him to go out and, instead of having all the kind of negative kind of injury memories that kind of everyone does have of him, it would just be nice for him to kind of have one final like swan song. So hopefully he can continue that. We'll start that, should I say, on Boxing Day against Villa.
He's looking sharp, touch wood. He hopefully does stay fit and injury-free because his recovery seems to have been done better than previous injuries. I think the World Cup break has almost helped that because now I think he looks 100% fit and ready to go. So, let's all pray that Oxlade-Chamberlain doesn't get another one of those big injuries. Doyle, though, let's move on to your match prediction. How do you think it's going to
go? Again, what top have you got on there? Is that
FC Nuremberg?
I couldn't quite work it out. I don't know why I was peering over the top of my screen there. It's as if I could probably see down the front. Yeah, that's how. That is obviously how things work, isn't it? Yeah. Well, score prediction. I think Liverpool win 2-1.
Keifer?
They've got a history of 2-1s, but I'll be different. I'll say 1-0.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a pretty painful one. I can see it being 0-0 for the majority of the game. I think Liverpool just nick it though towards the end, or hopefully so. Anyway, Well, I think that just about does us there. A huge thank you to Ian Doyle and Keifer MacDonald once again, making me feel as comfortable as ever in the blood red hot seat.
I think we've done it. I think you do. I think a round of applause for Pat there. Come on, I think he's done really well there.
Thank
You
you.
got a future. You got a future.
I like the Bajcetic of the Blood Red podcast.
you look a little bit like him, to be fair.
I'll send Matt Anderson his
well, I play like him as well. You should come and see me. And of course, a huge thank you for all of you watching and listening along. Be sure to subscribe and keep up to date with the Blood Red YouTube channel and whatever platform you get your podcasts from. We've got plenty of festive content coming your way, including Analysing Anfield on Saturday and an Alley Le Rouge and Poetry in Motion Christmas mashup ahead of the build-up to Liverpool's trip to Aston Villa. But for myself, Patrick Smith, Ian Doyle and Keifer MacDonald, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy the holiday season and we'll catch you all again soon.